All right. Welcome, everyone, to American Graveyard Podcast Live here at Red or Green Books. I'm your host, Marissa Prada, joined by my esteemed colleagues and guests today. We have Angie Williams, Elizabeth Wolf, Rick Spisak, and Blitz the Poet in the house. Welcome, everyone, to another edition. All right. This month, this is July 2025. I was about to say June again. Oh my gosh. I can't believe it's already halfway through 2025. It is flying by. And our topic today is the inspiration of, no, yeah, the contagion of inspiration. I think I wrote it backwards. The contagion of inspiration. I wrote it backwards, you guys. Sorry about that. The contagion of inspiration. These alliterations, they just get you all crazy when you're a poet and you start mixing things around. Yes, the contagion of inspiration is our topic today. We're going to be discussing gun violence in America as well as around the world. And I'm going to go ahead before I'm going to address some of the things recently that have been happening because I think it's been a crazy month for gun violence in America since we were here in June. And it seems like there's no shortage of things to discuss every time we get on this show. So let me go ahead and open us up with our mission statement and disclaimer. I do apologize. We're a little late today, but thank you for hanging in there and waiting for us to start. Our mission here at American Graveyard Podcast Live, we are an international collection of artists who come together in a unified global call for an end to gun violence. Each month, we will cover a different topic centered around gun violence. Its podcast is composed of facts, opinions, personal stories, local and global news and events, historical information, and other such matters. We will list where information was obtained and do our best to ensure that citations are from reputable, true sources. This is a free speech, not a hate speech zone. The disclaimer today, this podcast will discuss topics that may be graphic in nature and are unacceptable for some audiences, especially children. The discussions may include firsthand accounts, videos, audios, photographs, articles centered around gun violence. The opinions and viewpoints expressed during the show are not necessarily the opinions and viewpoints of every guest host, special guest, Red or Green Books, so the word is right. Viewer listener discretion is advised. All right. So welcome to Red or Green Books, and the word is right. It is our performing arts platform. Red or Green Books is our literary arts platform, and of course, Red or Green Films is our digital media. So we have a lot of things happening here. You can grab your copy of American Graveyard, Volume 1 at redorgreenbooks.com. Of course, Red, READ. Volume 2 will be out later this year. I'm very, very excited to bring Volume 2. We have so far at least 80 contributors. So it is a bigger book. Well, it's same size, more people. It's from countries we've never before published people from. So it's very exciting anytime we can bring new people into the American Graveyard team. It really widens our reach and increases the voices calling for an end to gun violence. So you can get your pre-orders will be available soon. You can get that on redorgreenbooks.com. If you live internationally outside the U.S., just reach out to us and we can help quote you for a shipment for a book. We're working on getting the book taken online so you can order it directly online and get it shipped to you anywhere in the world. All right. We also have a sponsor, a senator. If you would like us to send a book anonymously to U.S. state senator of your choice, you can do that at redorgreenbooks.com. You can even pick a state, and we will do that. And it's only $15 to send the book to U.S. State Senator. All right, let's go. Rules today: no hate speech, no bombing or misusing the chat. Stay muted while others are speaking. Must verify you are a real person if you're in the Zoom room. Unless I know who you are, your name must show up on the screen so we can verify who you are and that you are here for the right reasons. Also, civil dialogue exchanges only on the show. We do welcome discourse, but we definitely want it to be civil. So if you would like to be part of the show or come on as a contributor and you have a different viewpoint, we welcome that. We just also require civil dialogue. All right. My chair is like sinking down today. All right. So today's topic, the contagion of inspiration. Last month, we were discussing responsible gun ownership and education. And of course, I'm joined today with Angie Williams, Elizabeth Wolf, Rick Spisak, and Blitz the Poet. All right, a special shout out to Alexis Garcia for the namesake of the book. So excited that you're going to be in volume 2 as well. Let's get started today. So Angie, you have your slideshow. So let me go ahead and share my screen. I will mute myself, and you can kind of direct me if you would like through. There it is. I think that's it. Yeah, I hope that's it. All right. Yes. All right. Let me know when you can see it, and we'll get going today.
It's trying to share.
Yeah, I see it sharing, but I don't see a PowerPoint yet.
Right. It's trying to share. Okay, there we go. Hey, good afternoon, good morning, evening, afternoon, everyone. Um, this this is just a simple, really quick, down and dirty history, and it's telling us about how previous, especially Jonestown, how it was a precursor for a lot of the things that are going on now. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Actually, I'm not going to read anything. Um, I just wanted everyone to be able to understand that mass killings didn't just start. It didn't just happen. There was always something that caused it to happen. And since Jamestown is the largest that we can remember, not the only, but it's the largest that we can remember. That's the reason I used it as a precursor. Um, Jonestown, it came off as a suicide. But if you are encouraged to kill yourself, that's murder. You go to jail for that all day long. That is murder. And that is what he did. He encouraged 900 plus people, including children, to kill themselves. So therefore, that is why I consider that a pivotal point. Um, Now they just took it to a whole different level. You even have your youth. They think it's really cool to go in and kill people. They want to become famous. That's not a good way to become famous, and then they try to put it on mental illness being the reason a lot of them did it. Now, I cannot swear that that is not true, but I can say if you wait 10 years to snap, then there's something going on there that shouldn't be. Um, I'm sorry. Um,
One more piece left for each of us.
you can flip, Marissa, you can flip. Those are just reasons and ways that it causes. Your leadership can incite it. The way that the personality is. That's one of the ways. Those are just ways. That's just one of the ways that the contingency to the way encouragement is brought about. You can flip again. I think it's 3. Um, that's another way that it's being encouraged. You can flip all the way. There's a first clip. Since it's being recorded, they can go back and read that. It's a clip in between now. 2 clips. That's the first clip.
Okay, that's all I got.
It's a clip. It's two clips in there.
This is so whatever it is, it's only loading the titles, and then that's it. That's the
Okay,
end of the.
I can tell you what it was. And I do have those clips. I can easily just email them to. I can email them or text them to you, and you can put them up in the put them up.
You don't want to try sharing your screen? Do you want to
It
try
won't.
sharing
I
your
tried.
screen?
That's the reason I had to send it to you. It's not doing it. I had to do it on my phone. It's not gonna let me do it.
Oh.
My computer
You
just glitched.
you could try, or you could just kind of tell us what it was.
I'm gonna tell you about it, but I'm gonna also send you those clips. And if you want to, you can put them up on the site so people can see them. The first one was a newscast here in Tennessee, and it was talking about a mass shooting, but it was also telling how the media, it was actually admitting that the way that they were presenting it could be a possibility as to how, you talk about Columbine. You talk about Columbine and they make it look so glorious, not meaning to inspire, but meaning to inspire ratings when you're doing the same thing, but in two different ways. One is totally destructive. And for whatever reason, kids think that Columbine was really cool. I know that my daughters, when they went to Mount Juliet High, when Columbine anniversary, the kids went berserk. They start writing things all on the walls and stuff. And so a lot of kids was afraid to come to school. So that was one of them. And the next one was about the Second Amendment, how they were secretly they were trying to manipulate a way around the Second Amendment, the anti-gun organizations, in order to get it changed. I think they were suing, making all these different lawsuits against the uh, gun companies, which means that they're spending whether they win, lose, or draw. The whole point is to make them spend so much money that they have to go back and change their rules. They're not, they won't change the Second Amendment, so they're doing it in a way where the gun companies will have to change. So that was the whole thing. But I just wanted to make sure we knew, that the audience understood that mass shootings had to come from somewhere, and at least what could have possibly been the catalyst to starting it. That's the end of mine. Thank you,
Yeah,
Melissa.
absolutely. I mean, it's we do look back to Jonestown, when everyone drank the Kool-Aid. It became such an inspiration for the Oklahoma City bombing and other things. We've tapped on this a little bit through the podcasts, and certainly Columbine was a huge catalyst to lead us into the era we are experiencing, 20 years later. Um, I do want to recognize this last month in America, there have been a great deal of um, really just tragic gun violence incidences, and that are senseless. Um, some of them, I mean, it leaves me speechless. Recently, Minnesota Representative Hortman and her husband were killed in their home. And then Senator Hoffman and his wife were wounded uh, outside. They were 5 miles from their home, so they were just out and about living their life. Um, and attempts on the lives of our politicians and our leaders. Nancy Pelosi's husband was attacked not that long ago. It wasn't with a gun, but still, the climate of political violence in this country. January 6th was a huge, like, permission slip, if you will, for people to act violently, because they'll just get, you know, they'll be.
Slapped on the wrist.
No, they were all excused. Trump pardoned them, so they're going to be pardoned. So there's no it just seems like there's no consequences, right? And I kind of feel like, well, they kind of, now lawmakers have a taste of what it's like for teachers to go to school and have to teach in America today, right? I mean, we tend to think that these positions should be protected, that nobody would hurt these people, and they're protectors of our freedoms and our rights and our children and all these things. But now they're not really so protected, are they? And it's a very dangerous time because nobody's safe. But I think Americans haven't felt safe for a long time. Um, and I think the privilege of being a politician, thinking you're safe, perhaps that privilege is shedding a little, and they can feel a little bit more of what their constituents feel like. I guarantee you, people in their districts, or teachers, or administrators, or principals, or students, or have kids that go to school, and to go to work and not know if you're going to make it home to your family, right? No American should have to go through that. Recently, also, very, very tragic, absolutely devastatingly tragic, and we should do a whole episode on going to work, or death on the job or something, right? And our hearts go out to the families of everyone affected by gun violence, of course. But recently, firefighters responding to a brush fire were ambushed by an intentionally set fire, and a sniper, young white man, ambushed them with sniper fire and killed two of the firefighters, two battalion chiefs. And my daughter is dating the son of a firefighter right now. And I think about the dangers that firefighters face. They sign up to go into burning buildings, or to go towards a fire, or to respond to accidents. They're the first line of defense to help you when you need them. I've needed firefighters for fires before. I've needed firefighters because I've been in a car wreck before. My daughter broke her arm when she was 4 falling off a slide, and they were the first to respond. Firefighters are always there. They're the first people to help you. And so to watch them be gunned down is sickening. Firefighters should not be afraid they're going to be shot and killed on the job. And so, I don't care politically what your alignment is. If that doesn't make you feel some sort of way, if that doesn't make you recognize that things need to change in this country, I don't think you're paying attention. I don't think it matters enough to you. Dead kids don't matter. Dead politicians don't matter. Do dead firefighters matter? Right? We have to keep doing this, because this is just absolutely devastating at this point, where a young person with no criminal record, clear mental health distress, was able to maintain firearms, very powerful rifles, and was able to shoot and kill firefighters who were just trying to do their job. So my deepest apologies to the families. And then in Chicago a couple of nights ago, right outside the Chicago nightclub, someone drove by, a crowd of people getting out of the nightclub, and shot a bunch of people, killed a bunch of people. If gun violence has not affected you yet, it's only a matter of time. Are you not going to care unless it does? And so that's recognizing a little bit of the things that have been happening recently. Angie, I see your hand is up. I'm going to read what Blitz said in the chat real quick. Blitz says, it's unfortunate that lawmakers don't see these problems. I believe before purchasing a gun, people need to be mentally evaluated to determine the stability. Well, and so I mean, we did talk a little bit about mental health and guns, because how do you quantify mental health? As mental health is always shifting and changing. Someone could be perfectly fine today, and tomorrow they could be in crisis. So, mental health, we also know, is not a leading factor for gun violence. So, how do we flow with the fluidity of prevention? All right, Angie, I see your hands up, and Elizabeth, and then Rick, if you want to chime in about the recent events, and we'll keep going today.
And talking about your lawmakers, it's sad to think or see that if they are not affected directly, then nothing happens. Like with the Brady law, we wouldn't have had that if a senator hadn't been shot. And nothing happens unless somebody important is hurt. It seems like we don't count. Nothing matters. We don't matter because we're not in a certain group. And that's heartbreaking. Um, what does it take? It doesn't make sense. And when you talk about shooting, uh, when you shoot one person, you shot that whole family. You didn't shoot just one person, you shot the whole family. I know that from experience because my grandson lost his dad through gun violence. And at 13, you're already going through puberty. That it sent him off the rail for a minute. He's back on track, but it sent him off the rail. You destroy more than just one person. So yes, we need to fix this. Not sure how, but we got to fix this. Thank you.
And that's a lot of like what this podcast is, right? Let's figure out how. Let's be part of the solution. Let's inspire change. Let's inspire peace today and every day on this podcast. Elizabeth.
There's so much to respond to and everything that's been brought up. My little head is spinning, but let me try and see if I can do a through line here. So Angie was talking about the media and contagion. And one thing that they've done is they've stopped reporting the name immediately and the counts and sort of building up the celebrity of murderers. I grew up in the 60s where assassinations were a thing, and I can tell you page 2 of the paper every day after an assassination was everything about that person. So the media has changed a little bit how they handle this to not make cult figures or martyrs to the cause. Also, I want to mention a man called Mark Follman. He writes often for Mother Jones. Follman is Follman. He has a book called Trigger Points: How to Prevent the Next Mass Shooting. And so when you talk about mental health, one of the things he talks about is most of these people in mass shootings, it's not that one day they snapped. They've been making a plan for a long time. They've had their grievances and aired their grievances often publicly for a long time. And they've done like the FBI used to do to make profiles. They've gone and done interviews of mass shooters, whether it's public events or domestic events. And the only really mental health, I mean, nobody who is a mass shooter is, a poster child for mental health. But the thing that most often came up, the sort of uniting factor, was a form of narcissism. And that's kind of where the overlap with the inspiration and contagion comes in, is because they want that fame. They want that recognition of power. So one of the things Mark Follman is working on as a preventative, as a positive thing, is a behavioral threat assessment, not just background checks and red flag laws, which, I'm in favor of anywhere, everywhere, all the time. But behavioral threat assessment uses the data that they learned from these interviews and from past events to see what is most predictive of someone who is going to perhaps go off the rails, not for pre-punishment, right? Because we can't arrest someone for thinking about doing it, but we can intervene. And there are now models of successful interventions for mass shootings, also for domestic violence. My local domestic violence shelter has a checklist, and it's gone national, because when you know what you're looking for, you can intervene early enough to prevent the bad event. And the only other thing I wanted to say, if I could have another minute, so I was reading a blog by Robert Evans, and he talks about the gamification of the inspiration. And it's not that all video games are bad, or that anybody who plays a shooting game is going to turn into a mass murderer. It's this small subcult of a subcult on places like 8chan and 4chan, which do have a whole thing going on about body count, about remember the Christchurch shooting where he went into the church and he had the camera on so that you saw it unveil as if you were in a first person point of view shooting game. They immediately took that offline, but it was uploaded and taken down, uploaded and taken down, uploaded and taken down over 1 million times in the following hours. Just like you're shooting at firefighters, man, that's a sign that there's something in chaos that we have to fix. So it's Robert Evans that I first read about this, but after the shootings in Buffalo and the shootings in El Paso, there's now an international security group working on security assessments for the gamification of terror. Kind of like you threw back to Jonestown, kind of throwing back to the Alfred E. Murrah bombing. So there are people doing things that they hope will prevent the bad things from happening. They have very good evidence that these programs do prevent school shootings by getting kids help earlier. We've seen Crumley, the kid who in Maryland was a school shooter and his parents were arrested. Part of the outrage and why they were arrested is because there were all those signs that we should have seen. We did see and didn't do anything. So I don't think I did a through line, but yeah, the points I want to say.
It was great. I mean, all roads lead to Rome, right? I think it's all good, right? We're poets. We have a stream of consciousness that is our own. And so you just need to stamp your ticket and get on the train. That's it. No, there's so many things that you brought up. I wonder if Mark Folman would want to come on the podcast. We should absolutely invite him to the podcast to talk about his book and talk about his experiences. So if you know him or can tag him or send him this show, maybe he'll watch and he will want to be a part of things. So if that is the case, just email us americangraveyardpurpose@gmail.com. Okay. I love how you talk about the parallels for prevention being both mass shooting and domestic violence. As a survivor myself now of both, I do appreciate the overlap from domestic violence to risk assessments for mass shootings and for violence. And it's interesting to me, and it makes a lot of sense, that between all of the mass shooters the FBI interviews, there's a form of narcissism that is shared. And it makes sense because narcissists lack empathy. They lack the ability to create oxytocin bonding with other humans and things of that nature. So they lack the ability to bond in a way that is positive and human, and really have no empathy for the suffering of others. In fact, a lot of narcissists enjoy when people are hurting because that's what gives them the chemical dopamine effects in their brain. And so, there's no shock that is there. And I'm really enjoying your talking about the international community coming together because something has to happen. right? We know all of the things that are happening in the world right now, all the people who are dying and all the places and all of the fighting that's happening. And it's been like this for thousands of years, probably as long as humans have been alive. So we definitely should come together as a community, as a global community, for ending senseless, just absolutely senseless violence.
One
Um,
of the things I
yes,
think it's worth mentioning is that we are, unfortunately, in a political environment right now where if you wanted to be really, really nice and flexible and positive, you could say that violence is endorsed by the current leadership. That Americans have been told, hey, don't worry so much about criminals. Go ahead, rough them up. When the current political leader has encouraged his followers to rough up protesters in his rallies, and now has gone to the extent where, having brought a mob to attack our government, he has actually pardoned these people who have committed violence on not only our governmental officials, but also the police officers that try to protect Congress. We clearly have a gentleman in charge, and I'm using that term with the most absolute levity, who really condones political violence. And the point has been made way too often.
and he was almost shot too. Come on. How do you condone violence when you were an inch away from dying from a bullet? Like, I don't get it. Anyway, sorry.
That is the story, but many people have said, yeah, well, where's the ear damage that would come from a bullet shot to an ear? Anyway, that's another story entirely. Number one, there's no truth coming from this person. Number two, he's openly condoned violence. Number three, he's pardoned criminals who are guilty of violence. So I think that realizing that we have a government crisis, that people have not only condoned but encouraged political violence. And now those people of goodwill, and thank God there are many, have spoken out again and again and again and begged and pleaded their government to restrict these weapons of war to the general public. There is no sensible reason. No one is going to take an AK to go hunting rabbits. No one is taking an AK to go shoot a deer. Those are just irresponsible. And fun is fun, but when your fun includes hunting human beings, that's where the fun stops, you know? So I think we have to really reckon with the fact that we have a political structure right now that is really working hand in hand with the culture of violence. And that, I'm afraid, is something we have to deal with in a systematic level. I have a little presentation. Whenever you're ready for a few slides, let me know.
Sure. I just let me let Blitz chime in real quick and respond to that, and then Rick will go to your slides.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Blitz, you're muted, which is good, but you have to unmute to talk. Give him a sec. It takes him a sec. Hang on. See, he's well trained. He knows to mute his mic eventually. It's only taken him like 3 years.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, let's go, Blitz. All right.
All right. I just wanted to piggyback off what Elizabeth said about it does seem like some of these mass shooters are doing it for fame. And unfortunately, fame is a form of narcissism, as we know. And it's like they want to go out being infamous for doing something that's chaotic and destructive to not just the victims, but the family and friends of victims. Because, you know, when we lose people due to gun violence, it has a long, lingering effect on people. And some people never recover. And unfortunately, it can also spark people to say, well, if I lost friends and family due to gun violence, why don't I just go ahead and repeat the cycle? Because as they say, hurt people hurt people. And so all you're doing is creating more mass destruction and chaos. if you don't find ways to restrict it. And like y'all also said, with the current regime, if he was a victim of gun violence and he still allows violence, that's a deeply rooted problem. But we know that's a narcissistic person at his core. He could care less about the American people. But I don't want to go into that rant right now. But long story short, the gun violence can't end until the right people are in the positions to not say prevent, but the right people in power that are going to try to construct things differently. Because as long as we have politicians that are okay with violence, nothing's going to change. And I'll just mute from there.
No, you're totally right. I mean, it does have to start. It has to start with the laws and the legislators. I think if there had been a red flag law, the firefighters may never have been killed because that gun could have been confiscated. Although the guy was living out of his car, if anyone came across him and thought he would be dangerous, um, certainly that could have been something that was done differently. So looking at being able to prevent things is huge. Yeah, let's see. Rick, you've got some slides, so we'll let Rick do his slides, and then we'll all chime in. And then I have a video from the FBI to show, which is talking about the contagion of inspiration, if you will. Although that is my cool alliteration title. All right,
Well,
Rick.
I wanted to discuss the issue of political violence and its increasing role in American culture. Anybody who's paid any attention to American history knows that it was with violence that the Europeans came to this continent. It was with violence the land was stolen, people were murdered, and worse. And it's nothing new under the sun. But the level of political violence has, in fact, increased tremendously. So I brought some information about that. So I'm going to share screen. Okay, and then show you some slides and then some charts and then some slide information. This is just showing the increase from 2000 to 2018. And of course, you'd have to extend that line up to get into the 2020s, 21, 22, 23, 24, and now 25. So what we see is an increasing amount of violence. And somebody pointed out rightly that when those of us who are in our fifth, sixth, or seventh decade and can remember the 60s, can remember the 70s, there was a degree of political violence then too. And it was from, should we say, at least it wasn't the right, it was part of the left was in fact violent. That's true. But I think what you can say positive about that is that those people learn that you don't make allies by blowing people up. You don't make allies with bombs or with weapons. Some of us can remember way back to when an heiress was kidnapped, Patty Hearst was brought over to a progressive anti-war, theoretically, side, but then again, they were using violence. And the left, I think, by and large, outgrew that self-destructive project. And now what we see increasingly is that it's the far right who is embracing, and promoting to the very presidential level an outrageous insult to the American political process. So here we go. Take a look at this chart. They're calling environmental violence when people chain themselves to trees. And yes, it's true. There was a few spiking incidents where they were making it dangerous for people to clear cut forests. That's true. That did happen. But it was nothing like the level of what we're seeing today. And then, so we see this was environmentalists, this was single issue people, the religious fanatics. And now, I don't know what far left violence they saw in the early 20s, but I certainly, it didn't get any play in the sensational press, which I think says a lot right there. Now then we turn to another chart, and this is from Brightline Watch. and from the University of Chicago. Here, political violence. The percentage of partisans who believe that violence to advance their political goals is somewhat justified. I don't know. I've never seen a radical Democrat who's embracing violence. I have, however, seen tons and tons and tons of right wingers who do. So this is at least interesting. Yeah, the line does separate, of course.
I just want to say that in 2017, that was when Donald Trump was in the office.
Yeah.
I'm just pointing that out because you see this tremendous spike in politicians who believe violence will advance their goals.
Yep. Okay, and then this was, I thought, very interesting. It talks about how we can respond to this trend of violence. And it talks about 5 key areas that could be addressed to try to diffuse and reduce some of this political violence. Number 1, it says election credibility. You know, we have seen a very successful propaganda about election certainty, and unfortunately, it has been used to advance one certain political party. You might be able to guess who that is. Then it talks about the strengthening of electoral rules, policing, prevention, and redirection, so that we can look closely at how the process of elections work. You know, the wholesale scrubbing of voter rolls is in its own way a kind of violence on our electoral system. And it seems there's been almost no response from the Democrats to see all of these governors, all these elected officials on the right, on the Republican side, who have been cutting the voting rolls, reducing the voting time. And this doesn't help anyone's certainty, but clearly this is not a both sides do it kind of problem. Elizabeth, did you want to ask a question or make a comment?
I just wanted to say that you might not have seen a lot of Democrat reaction, but man, the ACLU and Mark Elias of Democracy Docket, and there's a lot of people that have been jumping all over this in the courts. So
You're
a
right.
lot.
You're absolutely right.
We don't see enough of the pushback, but it is blissfully happening, and long may it reign.
Absolutely, you make a wonderful point, and thank you for that. I'm just, the point I wanted to make was more that the political people on the Democratic side are not drawing attention to the slashing of voter rolls, the cutting of time. You know, the recent spate of laws that we've seen where you can't let somebody sit down while they're waiting for 4 or 5 hours. You can't bring them a drink of water. This stuff, you know, I mean, it gives microaggression a whole new meaning, you know, and while, you know, we're laughing about it now, but it is critically damaging the American electoral process. And what do we see as a result? The election of a criminal into the White House, who's somewhere divided between selling shoes and fake coins, and then putting a used car dealership on the White House lawn. This is his idea of presidential leadership. Okay, more credible elections, changing the electoral rules. Another point I wanted to get to was when voters feel unrepresented, when they feel disillusion, that's another reason why these kind of irrational solutions seem to bubble up. Post-conflict countries have often redesigned their electoral institutions. For example, a major plank in the Northern Ireland involved introducing a type of ranked choice voting. You know, there are examples of very divided countries moving to a new, more peaceful direction. South Africa especially is another fine example of a population that was abused, absolutely brutally abused, and yet has found a way to move not completely to democracy, but in a more democratic direction. And some political violence, anyway, has been reduced. There are samples out there. There's examples that have worked very effectively. I'll do one more and then I'll stop and let someone else talk for a bit. But police reform, serious, honest police reform is very important. In my own life, and I live inside a white skin, I have seen plenty of abuse by police officers and have in my own peaceful life been drawn on 4 times by police when I was either just sitting there or I was calling for help. So yes, and if I didn't have white skin privilege, I know I would have many, many more examples. We have to really work much harder to get a colorblind law enforcement process. It is critical in my mind. Well, thank you so much for listening.
And thank you so much, Rick, for that. You're always so thoughtful. Everyone on the show is always so thoughtful when they're putting things together. I appreciate that. Does anyone want to respond to the political violence piece? And I absolutely I'm not a history nerd, but somehow you make me want to nerd out about history. Even when we're talking about like the tragic parts of our history. And we, especially as Americans, must acknowledge our history and how we all came to be here. But then also, as we're reflecting on where we're going as a society, how to create peace, we have to know what happened so we can not repeat it again. Somehow it seems like we're repeating history with all these deportations right now, which seems like maybe we really haven't come so far, America. All right. Blitz has his hand up, but then anyone else who would like to respond to the historical lesson and the political violence concept, and then we'll go to the Echoes of Columbine that the FBI has on their website. Yes, Blitz. You're muted again, sir. It is helpful to be muted when you're on a Zoom, just so y'all know.
As far as political violence goes, I do feel like part of it is maybe it's my opinion, but it's a temper tantrum thing of, I don't like this politician, so let me retaliate. And I don't condone that one way or the other. And I look at political violence like with the senators that were attacked in Minnesota, or with the assassination attempt of our current leader. I look at those as extreme levels of political violence. I don't like this person, so let me try to finish this person. That's not the way we get results. We get results by voting people that we don't believe out of office and voting for the people we believe in into office, not trying to end their lives because they're not doing things the way you want it. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we could go on and on and on. It's a whole TED talk just about voting rights in America. Okay. I mean, people have to have access to voting. They have to know voting. They have to know what they're voting for. They have to be able to get to the voting stations or be able to vote remotely. You have to be able to early vote, ballot vote, all that stuff. And there's so many restrictions on voting rights, especially for poor communities of color. We know this. And so how do we educate people on what they're voting for, encourage them to go vote, and get them to the polls, right? I mean, those are all huge issues. They're just symptomatic of a larger disparity in this country. Yes, Elizabeth.
All right, so it's a little bit off topic, but while we're talking about politics in general and how do things change, I just have to share that I was part of the million people who went to Boston for No Kings, Yes Queens Day. And the reason that I'm bringing it up here is Boston has a very long history, and it has certainly not all been pretty and good. And So it was a really interesting day. I was in a crowd that was more mixed than any I've been in at any protest. Age, color, gender, anything that can be mixed, that crowd was mixed. And the cop who was near my corner was an African American man with a rainbow flag and locks halfway down his back. That was not a Boston cop when I was growing up. They had a duck boat go by with our elder LGBTQ citizens. Those people have seen some stuff, okay? So that day there was a lot of really visual evidence of change in my lifetime. So we have to know that it's possible. It's never been perfect, but it can always be better. There was one point where I was walking back where there was someone up in a window in a high building. And for just a moment, I imagined that person with not so good intentions and what one shooter up there could do. And I'm starting to look around and think, how am I going to exit, or how am I going to take care of everybody if this worst things happens? So it's a thing. We've been changed. I would not have thought 20 years ago. I would not have thought, before the concert in Las Vegas, oh crap, look, there's someone in a window. So I didn't mean to end on the low note.
No, you're totally fine. And you bring up an absolutely perfect point, because people, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on, should be able to go to political rallies and not feel like they're going to die. I mean, even at the Trump rally, when the assassination attempt happened on him and the guy behind him got killed, right? I think he was a firefighter too. So we're not trying to necessarily make this a left or right issue. This is an everyone issue. This is an American issue. Gun violence in America is an everyone issue. And if you don't think it's an issue for you, you just simply haven't been paying attention. Yes, Elizabeth.
There's one other thing I wanted to say that Boston does right, because when Boston does right, you got to call it out.
Tea parties.
Tea parties. As the parade was coming down the street, there's a very small section of Boston that's almost like a grid, like the rest of the world. And they had garbage trucks parked blocking the street that wasn't closed so that no one could drive into it.
Right. I mean, look at New Orleans, right? I mean, we have to stop having the mentality, it's not going to happen to me. It's not going to happen in my town. Stop that mentality.
So they were thinking ahead, and therefore I felt like I could dance in the street.
Yes, you felt safe, and that's important. You felt safe, but you still were vigilant, and you still had to have enough courage to go. My youngest daughter is going to be 11, and she says, "Mom, political rallies are dangerous." I said, "Well, it could be dangerous to go to the movies." The idea being that we want to go to places where there are plenty of people that are taking the proper precautions to be surrounded by whatever it is, to be as safe as possible. So whatever it is you're rallying for, you should be able to go and stand on the sidewalk and rally. And because that is your right, your right to free speech, your right to assemble peacefully, your right to be an American and have your voice heard. That is your right to be able to go to these things. And you, by not expressing your opinion and by not fighting for what you believe in, you're allowing terror to win. And we can't do that. But we are all now very acutely aware that we are risking our life in doing so. And it's just a terrible thing. We should not be afraid to go places.
I keep saying the more of us who go, the safer we'll all be. If we all decide to show up, then we outnumber them.
I think, like even New Orleans was proof that you don't have to have a gun to hurt people. If people want to hurt people, they're going to find a way. But guns, unfortunately, can create mass casualty events. And so we really, really need to get a handle on this, America. All right, I'm going to play this this video. It's the Echoes of Columbine, because the theme today, of course, is the contagion of inspiration, how things evolved from Columbine. This is on the FBI.gov website. It is the video that's there. It's titled Echoes of Columbine. I don't think you can quite get to a more like honest website than the FBI. Honest, I don't. Well, we'll see. Our federal government's been shaken up and torn up and rebuilt. So. But this video has been around for a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and share screen. Hang on one sec.
Today, Columbine continues to resonate with a new breed of shooter, inspiring a cult-like following of those who see Columbine as a kind of twisted blueprint to follow and surpass. Columbine is seen as the origin story for many of the attacks that followed. They call it the Columbine effect.
Columbine effect is really a psychological footprint of what it does to people. This event occurs and it becomes mystical to many people, to the point that they want to make a pilgrimage just to see Columbine High School, or they want to become part of the Columbine mentality, or they want to become a Columbine shooter.
We're getting close to Columbine High School. I've always wanted to come here.
They want to feel it, they want to touch it, they want to experience it. This is their mecca. This is where they want to be. This is what they feel connected to.
And you see over there? That's the library. That's where everything took place right there.
While Columbine certainly wasn't the first, it was one of the first that unfolded on national TV for hours.
They view that as the beginning of the beta revolution, where the rejected or the isolated males take revenge on the alpha males and the alpha females. Those two young men stood on the stage at the center of the social solar system for youth and screamed and yelled their rage through violence, and did so in a manner that got worldwide attention.
Columbine has inspired over 80 copycat attacks. Hundreds of lives have been lost. Countless more have been injured, and its impact keeps on growing.
Even though young people today weren't born at the time of Columbine, Columbine is still alive.
Breaking news, a school shooting with reports of multiple fatalities, this time in Santa Fe, Texas.
Probably this shooter was operating off the Columbine boilerplate. You know, there's so many little commonalities, the trench coat, you know, bringing the explosives.
Columbine gives them a template, and it also gives them a challenge to exceed the damage done at Columbine.
We had a terrible shooting at Virginia Tech in 2007.
At least 30 people believed to be killed on the campus of Virginia Tech University.
And that young man had written an essay expressing admiration for the Columbine shootings.
For all the online notoriety, much of the information about Columbine turns out to be wrong. The shooters were not outcasts. They were not victims.
There's so many websites out there dedicated to the Columbine tragedy that they find this misinformation and they begin believing what they read. Most of them believe that what happened here was a result of bullying.
These kids were not bullied. They never once mentioned bullying. We need to change that story that's out there and quit glorifying them.
Since 2000, there have been over 50 active shooter incidents targeting schools, nearly a quarter of them resulting in mass killings. But creating a profile of the average school shooter isn't easy. In fact, it may not be possible at all.
You can describe a kid who's depressed and alienated and narcissistic and plays violent video games, and he's a victim of bullying, and maybe he wears black trench coats. The problem is every high school is going to have kids fitting these profiles. The FBI's profiling units concluded that profiling wouldn't work for school shooting.
While profiling doesn't work, A series of studies over the past 20 years found that many school shooters do share common characteristics.
One of the first steps is always a perceived injustice on the part of the attacker.
An injustice collector is somebody who has held on to and nurtured grievances, usually over a long period of time. We all experience humiliations and setbacks. For active shooters, it's like a bruise that never heals.
A feeling of being victimized. Things like being kicked off the debate team, girls not wanting to have sex with you. The perceived injustice may seem really bizarre. So what we tell folks is, if it's real to them, it better be real to you.
Revenge is a driving force in school violence because it's born from humiliation and loss of control. Ultimately, the desire is to regain control.
Often, school shooters are looking for their 15 minutes of fame, media attention that will give them recognition, no matter how grim.
We continue to have young people who are very troubled, alienated, withdrawn, who are looking for some way to make a statement about their frustration. And unfortunately, when they turn to the media, they see many examples that give them ideas.
Shortly before 9 this morning, police responded to reports of a shooting at Sal Castro Middle School. Police detained a 12-year-old girl and recovered a weapon.
Somebody who is feeling marginalized and who's maybe contemplating an act of violence is recognizing that that shooter is getting infamy and notoriety, which is really appealing to them.
Most school shooters, like all active shooters, don't have a background in crime or a criminal history of violent behavior. But they do have challenges.
25% of the attackers had a mental health diagnosis prior to the attack. But there was evidence of mental issues in about 61% of the attackers. So while they didn't have an official diagnosis, they may have been struggling with mental health issues.
Mental health issues by themselves aren't predictive of anything, but they may factor in. Anxiety, depression, and hopelessness may all amplify a potential shooter's grievances.
Shooters on average experience about 3 or 4 stressors in their life leading up to the attack.
Instability in the home life, domestic violence, family violence, financial issues. There's tons of motivators.
Suicidal risk can oftentimes play a part. About 90% had some evidence of suicidal ideation prior to the attack.
Beyond individual psychological stressors, another catalyst lies out on the internet. Almost all attackers find inspiration in the attacks that came before. Each one is more likely to trigger others. Potential shooters don't just get interested in previous attacks. They're fascinated. They study them in detail, collecting books, articles, video clips. But even for someone with these characteristics, the path to violence is most often a long trajectory. Over 77% of all active shooters, including school shooters, spend days, weeks, even months getting ready.
School attacks are not sudden or impulsive. They don't just snap. They consider, plan, and prepare. It's very methodical, and it takes time for them to plan their attack.
And in that time, they often reveal their violent intentions.
We call them pre-attack behavior indicators.
There were statements that they made, things that they did that suggested a threat.
We are getting word of another possible mass shooting, this one at a community college in Southwest Oregon, Umpqua Community College. This has been another mass shooting in the United States with a large number of people either dead or wounded.
The perpetrator struggled with anger, struggled with frustration. He had been hospitalized on several events because of wanting to harm others.
The mother talked about an incident when he pointed a loaded shotgun at her.
He's upset with life, and it goes into more of this feeling that there needs to be violence to resolve his grievance.
On the day of the attack, the perpetrator handed a classmate a thumb drive containing his manifesto and instructed him to deliver it to law enforcement.
We see throughout that manifesto the sense of entitlement and anger for him not having things in his life that he feels that he should have.
He also talked about how he is a loner, how he's a virgin, doesn't have a job, sort of the mindset of that the world is against him.
He does his research and planning, just like all the others that we see do. He did talk about Columbine, and he really starts to see himself in those other shooters.
What are those pre-attack behavior indicators? They start with behavior changes, increases in impulsiveness, recklessness, and aggression.
If suddenly you see a dramatic change in behavior in someone's social media posture and a real decline in their functioning, as well as maybe an obsession with past attacks and inappropriate or escalated interest in weapons, those are all red flags potentially.
In order to engage an attack, what we find is there have to be two variables there, a desensitization and a dehumanization. So the desensitization gives a person courage to engage in the attack behavior. The dehumanization moves the individual from a person who has family and feelings to a slab of meat or an object.
In the weeks and the months leading up to the attack, there's a sense of a downward spiral in their life, that they may be disengaged from schoolwork, from classes, or from their employment. That sense of the downward spiral is oftentimes very noticeable to others, including peers, teachers, employers, and coworkers.
Another key warning sign is known as leakage, an intentional or unintentional signal that they are on the pathway to violence.
Leakage is really a broadcast where the individual is telling you kind of what they're about to do.
Tomorrow is the day of retribution. The day in which I will have my revenge against humanity.
They'll broadcast by making comments, they'll broadcast by different writings, they'll broadcast by classroom assignments, they'll broadcast by telling their friends. In the virtual world of the social media, they'll broadcast by posting things on, YouTube or their Facebook or websites, Instagram.
A lot of these threatening remarks turn out to be not criminal in nature, but at some point, these individuals evolved. They cross that line.
In about a third of the cases, the school shooter actually drafts a manifesto to lay out their motives. Often they portray themselves as a god or some kind of heroic avenger. The analysts call these legacy tokens.
Legacy tokens are the offender's way of claiming responsibility for the attack, as well as, in their words, telling us why they wanted to do this attack.
You forced me into a corner and gave me only one option. The decision was yours. Now you have blood on your hands that will never wash off.
You girls have never been attracted to me. I don't know why you girls aren't attracted to me, but I will punish you all for it.
The Santa Barbara shooting, a very misogynistic manifesto was provided before he attempted to kill the college girls in their sorority. So I think we've seen an increase in manifestos and theatrics.
In case after case, the warning signs are present, and there is time to detect them.
One of the most common myths about school shooters is that they can't be stopped, whereas the opposite is true.
School shootings can be stopped. They are preventable. There are observable and detectable warning signs and indicators that will provide opportunities for intervention and identification of potential school shooters.
In the aftermath of a shooting, many schools respond by enacting a policy of zero tolerance.
A 7-year-old Maryland boy was suspended from school after biting his Pop-Tart into the shape of a gun.
After Columbine, zero tolerance became no tolerance for, finger pointing and plastic utensils and water pistols. All around the country, we've seen kids who have been kicked out of school for pointing their finger and going pow pow, but there's no evidence that that works. There's zero evidence for zero tolerance.
Preventing a school shooting requires a more tailored approach.
We've really been focusing increasingly on the idea of threat assessment, discerning the threat early and mitigating it before an event.
I evaluated a young man who committed the school shooting in Paducah, Kentucky. Under the stress of bullying, he became depressed and withdrawn. And then he actually went to school and told some of his friends, "Don't be in the lobby Monday morning." The sad thing is, over a dozen kids were warned about the threat. None of them went to an adult. I realized there were so many places that this event could have been stopped. And that's when I heard the term threat assessment, and it clicked.
A threat assessment is attempting to answer the question of, is this person on a pathway towards violence?
Preventing a school shooting starts with creating a threat assessment team, a multidisciplinary group of educators, counselors, and law enforcement all working together.
Each individual will bring a different perspective to the team and provide different databases. You're able to see the big picture.
Our threat assessment team members, they're problem solvers. So if we can figure out how to solve that young person's problem, there's no need for them to resort to violence.
For threat assessment teams, the challenge boils down to answering several important questions.
What is their behavior? Are they on a pathway toward violence? Have they acquired weapons, tried to recruit an accomplice? Have they engaged in some planning or preparation to carry out a violent act?
To answer those questions, researchers have developed several basic threat assessment models. The Salem-Kaiser model is a snapshot built around 20 questions which identifies risk factors that increase the possibility a student will act out violently.
The protocol drives the team to determine where there are levels of risk that need to be addressed to.
In Parkland, we had 169 reports of planned school attacks in a 2-week period in this district.
Safe Oregon is a program that was developed where students, parents, faculty can reach out via text messaging, mobile app, telephone calls, emails to a call center and report any type of behavior.
Here in LA County, the Department of Mental Health has a 24/7
Honestly, if you're scared to go to school, principal or police officer or SRO, get on the app, report it.
We really need to encourage them to come forward whenever they see a change in behavior. For us, the change of behavior is significant.
We've had threat assessment cases where it was the parent who came forward and said, I'm concerned about something my child said or did or something I saw in his bedroom. But the parents aren't willing to do that if they think it's going to bring a hammer down on their child. They have to know that the school has a threat assessment approach, that approach is problem-solving oriented, and that we try to intervene before there's a criminal act.
In most of these cases, the families, the parents have no idea what the kids are doing.
Maybe they've never gone online and looked what their young person has posted. Is there anything in their diaries at home? Is there anything in their bedroom?
Well, the key is working with the families, communicating to them that the goal isn't necessarily to take the kid, arrest them, and incarcerate them, throw away the key, but rather to find the kind of help for that kid that would benefit them in the long term. And I think most parents are more than willing to do that.
It's better to say something and have it not be anything than to have to live with the fact that you had a piece of the puzzle and then you were unable to share it with somebody.
Between the attacker and the campus.
We found that overwhelmingly, 91% of the attackers had some type of affiliation to the college campus.
After the Newtown shooting, we had a student at Cal State LA who posted on social media. Newtown was nothing. When we worked with the university, we found out that the individual was indeed seeking services there. And lo and behold, he lived in East Hollywood with his family, and his father had a closet full of guns. We went to the house, determined the firearms were not properly secured. We removed the firearms, informed the family. The family had no idea that their son in college was making these postings.
Research shows again and again, threat assessment and intervention do work.
We're preventing school attacks around this country all the time. And I think, it's one of the little-known successes.
In Virginia, we've had cases where young people have been apprehended with a weapon at the door of the school. There are thousands of threats, and 99% of them aren't carried out. And so that's really the best evidence that what we're doing is effective.
Even with this success, communities must be prepared in the event of an attack.
In law enforcement, you'll train active shooter once a year for 8 hours. And then to think, 10 months from now, when it's your day, that we're gonna perform, it's insane.
We're seeing too many communities around the country that still don't believe that these school shootings are gonna happen. So it's time to step up. Protect your community, protect your kids.
People sometimes ask me, should the police and school people work together? And my answer is they have to. We don't want school folks to underreact to serious cases where law enforcement intervention is needed. And we don't want law enforcement to overreact to cases that are not serious.
I'd say this to cops. If you don't have good relationships with your educators, fix it. Schools, if you don't have good relationships with your cops, fix it. Fix it right now before it's too late.
After 2 decades, the echoes of Columbine still resonate with what we have lost and what we have learned.
We have learned quite a bit about active shooters and how we can prevent these attacks from happening. What it involves is a partnership between bystanders, peers, teachers, family members, as well as law enforcement and mental health, all working together as a team to prevent these things from happening.
Can I tell you that today, on this date and time, that a school attack is going to occur? No, I can't predict that it's going to happen, but I can prevent it. All we really need is one person who comes forward.
It's rare to get a chance to actually save lives, but this is one of those times. We may never prevent every attack, but in hometowns all across the country, we can make a difference.
There's so much in that video, right? There's so much, and I think that having the FBI do videos like this really helps people understand what to look for, why and how someone might be inspired to conduct a mass shooting, especially this particular video is, excuse me, more geared for schools. And going into that deep discussion about the threat assessment, right? And they even say, there's so many communities that still think it won't happen to them, and you have to stop that mentality. If the school is not talking to law enforcement and law enforcement not talking to schools, and he also brings up a very good point, if law enforcement is doing active shooter training for 8 hours a year, and that's it, one time for 8 hours in a whole year, how really truly prepared are they to respond, right? And so I'll turn it over to everyone. They talked about the Columbine effect. Since Columbine, there's been over 80 copycat inspired attacks. Like, it's nuts. But having so many things, of course, we're able to look at the trends and the data to be able to put things in place to prevent these things from happening. And parents need to tap into their kids and figure out what's going on and help them and monitor them and report, and don't be in denial. All right. Blitz, I see your hands up.
I'm learning how to hit the unmute button now. But I was going to say that with 8 hours of training a year is nowhere near enough training for active shooters. And that right there is a problem within law enforcement itself, because you can't save lives if you're not practicing that more often. I'm not saying you have to do it every week, but I would say 12 times a year, once a month, you should spend that 8 hours. I feel like once a month training would be better than 8 hours out of an entire year, because you never know when you're going to have to deal with an active shooter.
Yeah, I mean, and then you run into the funding issues, right? There's a huge deficit in the number of law enforcement on the streets right now. A lot of people don't want to be cops. I don't blame them. So how do you?
I definitely wouldn't.
How do you, it's like, how do you have continuing ongoing education for law enforcement when there's not even enough cops on the street? And then you got to pay all those cops to be there too. And that's all taxpayer dollars. So a lot of it is, I think we're still in the mentality, in the political climate that we're in, that it doesn't matter. It won't happen to me. It won't be so bad. And they're not investing into the resources for prevention and then responding. Elizabeth, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to do a little of the personal is political here. Um, I recognized as I was prepping for this, my daughter's friend, Ben, who I've read poems about before, who killed himself. The police came to our house afterwards, and I believe what they were doing was a threat assessment because Ben ticked so many of those boxes. And my daughter and I have a great relationship, but there were so many things I was not aware of. There was someone in their friend group who had made a Facebook page as Eric Harris. It was Ben. Ben had dubbed over the Columbine footage with songs and screams and showed it to all his friends, but not to any adults. He was a cutter. He had obvious issues going on. I don't know how long he was suicidal. So when the cops came to our house, they were trying, I believe, to figure out whether he was planning to be a school shooter and had just impulsively committed suicide, or, you know, where he was on the spectrum. So it was really, it was years ago, but I'm still putting it together with new information all the time. And I think we were part of a behavioral assessment for our area where, you know, they'd like to think it can't happen here, but we all know it could.
And it's so sad, you know, they mentioned the FBI video mentioned that 25% of these school shooters have a mental health diagnosis, but they believe that 61% of them actually suffered from mental health issues. But overarching all of that, 90% had suicidal ideation. And so
that's
really,
what Sue Klebold says too, right? That
right.
this is really spectacular suicide.
Right. And you know, spectacular murder is part of what we're going to be covering in a future podcast, right? The infamy that comes along with shooting, with being a mass shooter. But if we are cutting the suicide prevention hotline from this country, and we're cutting resources for young people who are suffering with ideation, and we're not educating parents on what to look for and how to help, and we're not encouraging communication between schools and law enforcement, how in the world are we going to help these kids? Because intervention works. We know this. Yes, Angie, your hand is up.
One thing I want to say is that as parents, we have to be a little bit more in the times, because my kids are grown, true enough, but have grandkids. And one set of my grandkids are 18, 19, 21. The other set is 8, 13, and 10. And those two sets have two different ways of communicating. They have two different sets of issues. So I had to learn how to be a now grandmother, how to be able to tell what you're looking at on TikTok. Um, a lot of parents are so busy, they don't have time to look at those things, and then they don't think, oh, my child would never do that. Yeah, your child can do it, and you don't know they're doing it. Like she was saying, the guy was a cutter. If I saw multiple scars on my kid, I'm gonna try to find out what happened. I am. Um, it's not our fault, but it is our fault. You're never supposed to be so into your world. And it's very easy, especially if you're a single parent. It is very easy. All you're trying to do is take care of that family, and you forget there's another part of that. So I think along with us trying to get rid of the gun violence, part of the key is paying attention to the kids, especially guys. We grow up saying guys don't need love and hugs, and that is not true, because you cannot a person cannot know love if they have never, ever received love. And if they're going to say that guys grow up to be little girls if you hug and kiss, those lies. I kiss on my grandkids. I kiss my grandson. And my son, although I lost my son in 2023, yeah, I still hug and kissed on him. So, yeah, it's up to us in more than one way. And that's all I want to say.
Oh, you're totally right. I mean, how are children supposed to develop empathy and learn how to bond with people when all their experiences are negative, when they don't have a trusted adult in their life, or when the adults in their life demonstrate that you don't have to follow the rules and you don't have to listen to authority, or they have such disdain, for example, for women that it creates a misogynistic view of women in the world. Instability in the home was one of the things they said was part of the Columbine effect, right? And they said in the video that one of the people in the video said, if it's real to them, it better be real to you. And I think that's so important, right? We dismiss children. We don't listen to kids. We defend the reasons. Classic example was recently there was a boy in my daughter's class who brought a knife to school and showed the kids. And my daughter told me, and I consulted with her teacher and the principal. And parents who were also educators, which shocked me, their excuse was, well, he has a knife collection as a fifth grader. So we need to stop enabling this, especially at a young age. We need to stop making excuses. But to the amazing response of the school, they held a meeting with me to talk and my daughter to make sure she felt she could go to class and not be targeted. But at the end of the day, you got a lot of kids, you don't have a lot of teachers. So, you know, we still have no idea if it, when or where things can happen. But all we can do is speak up and hope and pray that the educators know what they're doing and can keep your kids safe at school. But that was crazy. So, anyways, does anyone want to share a poem? Would anyone like to read anything as we wrap up and close today? Yes, Elizabeth.
I had a poem that I was going to share today. And I also wanted to say to Angie, who said parents need to be involved. It's not their fault. It's not your fault, but it's your responsibility. I think that's what we're trying to get at here. So I have a poem I want to read. Okay, I got the poem up in front of you, so now I can't see your little boxes. It's from my collection, Parenting in the Age of Columbine, because my daughter was born the week of Columbine. She's now 26 years old. And this was written for Newtown. Close Your Eyes, Hold Hands is the title, and the epigraph is, by any measure, we are failing these children. Barack Obama, Newtown, Connecticut. The first person he killed that morning was his mother. I lost my page. Here we go. The first person he killed that morning was his mother. In her home, in her bed, shot 4 times in the head. Adam Lanza took his mother's car to Sandy Hook Elementary School, where he shot and killed 20 first-grade students plus 6 adults, including the principal. Then Adam shot himself. There was controversy over how many crosses to erect. Someone put out 28, but 2 crosses were torn down. It's easy, it's common, it's practically protocol to blame the mother, Nancy Lanza. After all, she bought the guns. Nancy Lanza brought her son to shooting ranges. It was something they did together. Mother and son, son and mother. But he had problems with women. Mother trying to care for son, refused to talk to his dad. Mother moving only as directed in her own house. He's down cellar playing his games, trying to help, trying to get him services, trying. He's going through a tough time. Adam left behind a massive spreadsheet of mass murders, videos from Columbine, and selfies posed holding a gun to his head. Adam's father, Peter, interviewed 2 years after, is haunted every hour of every day. All those children, all their parents, all 4 bullets in his ex-wife, one trigger pull for each member of the Lanza family. Peter Lanza wishes his own second son had never been born. Thank you.
That's a powerful piece, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for sharing. It's, you know, as artists, we are constantly evaluating the world and the world that we live in. And so it's really important we don't forget about these incidences and we continue to shine a spotlight on it with our pen and the microphone. So I thank you for digging into that. And yeah. Blitz, would you like to read your poem? And Angie, are you going to read a poem?
No, now that's a little bit sad for me.
He's working on getting unmuted here. There we go, Blitz. There we go.
Yeah, can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, let me pull the poem up. I was getting me some lunch. It's called 19. Shots and screams. People bleed, but who is there to save them? 19 lives ended with no one to save them, but our boys in blue wasn't able to save them, but they wonder why people say defund the police. One man with a gun, they had one man with a gun, and they are scared to stop him, hearing children calling 911, no response. But let it be an unarmed black man or even someone possibly fleeing the scene, and they don't stand a chance. 19 kids didn't make it home, but there were at least 19 officers who did make it home after stalling for roughly 90 minutes to do what they are allegedly paid to do. They're supposed to protect and serve, but the nerve of them to tase and cuff a parent who was willing to do what they wouldn't and save lives. A police chief whose next move was politics didn't seem to care as he possibly stared at the situation. It was like, not my problem. I'll be on the city council soon. So Uvalde elected a coward and fraud who probably ran a good campaign game to get in a position of power. He got what he wanted, the people's vote. Now we know what kind of man you truly are. Pete Ariando may have schemed his way into a council seat, but will he repeat? The people of Uvalde have seen your true colors, so how will you fool them next? What's the old saying? You can fool some of the people all the time, but you can't fool all of the people all the times. I might have that wrong, but we know where you truly stand at this point. Those kids' blood is on your hands, along with the 2 teachers. One bad decision left 21 dead and a whole community and city shook for years to come. Uvalde, Sandy Hook, Columbine, and unfortunately, the list goes on. So when will the madness end? That's that piece.
Thank you, Blitz, so much.
You're
Uh,
welcome.
it's true. You know, Uvalde, the shooting in Uvalde was the catalyst for this movement at Red or Green Books. So it is important that we continue to speak on these incidences um,
And
and
that's a
not.
3-hour drive for me. But anything that happens in my state, I take serious.
Yes. Um, so I'm going to go ahead and read my newest poem. I was thinking a lot on Wednesday about the impending 4th of July and what it means to be a patriot. And so this is my newest poem titled Mark and Oscar. And it's an epigraphic poem. And the epigraph is from Mark Twain. And it says, patriotism is supporting your country all the time and your government when it deserves it. So many people I love and have loved fought and died for this country, for the freedom to write these words, speak these thoughts. Speak these thoughts, fight this fight, because I still don't feel at all like a patriot. My elementary school was named Mark Twain. It's where I learned sign language and learned that travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow mindedness. But no one told me about my opinions or my options for patriotism. That patriotism is supporting your country all the time, but your government when it deserves it. Because it doesn't deserve my support right now, or yours, or anyone's. Because the vicious has made a virtue of patriotism. And Oscar Wilde must be turning in the grave, wondering why we are still talking about this. We have many flags folded behind glass. The sacrifice, the empty experiences that will never be known, are saluted for glory and freedom. But none of us are free. We have never been free. So please stop waving your flag unless you're willing to vote back the rights for women to decide what happens to our bodies. Unless you're willing to vote out slavery on ballots in the South. Unless you're willing to walk across the aisle, support those who need it with money, healthcare, immigration, medicine, education, daycare assistance, lunch programs for kids, where parents don't send their kids to school without needing a reunification card after the next mass shooting, or worry about being deported at their church even though they were born here, or go to a concert without worrying about being shot, where a woman's skirt can be as short as she wants because rape is rape and no means no. Because right now, a lunatic is making the decisions and we need to speak up. No justice, no peace. Because the folded flag that watches from behind the glass above his bookshelf really wants it to all be for something. For all of us who want to create a country, indivisible, where there is liberty and justice for all, and the place where your dreams can come true, in a safe homeland we can all be proud of. Happy Independence Day, America. And that's that piece. Uh, any closing thoughts or remarks before we close the show?
I do.
Yes, ma'am.
I think that at least we're doing something to try to create a change. It's not so much if you create a change, it's the fact that you tried. You will never know what you can do unless you step out on faith and try.
And it's interesting. I love that you said that. I was on an Instagram live the other day and we were discussing the Diddy case, right? And the really just mass injustice for survivors. And I said, someone had posited the question, well, I'm only one person. What can one person do, right? And I said, well, look, I was just one person. I was just one person after Uvalde who was a mom who had kids. And I was like, I'm just one person. What can I do? Well, I created an online performing arts platform during COVID and hosted thousands of people and hundreds of shows, if not thousands of shows. Started a publishing house. We published hundreds and hundreds of people from around the world. And we're on the heels of publishing our millionth word. We started 2 podcasts advocating for LGBTQ rights and an end to gun violence. We're starting the nonprofit. We're bridging into film. Like we one person has done this. And I'm not saying you have to do this. I'm not saying you have to be as big and crazy as I was when I thought that this was going to be a good idea to start something, and I didn't realize how massively it would change my life. But go do something. Join the podcast. Speak up. If share the video. Share this podcast on your social media. Go send it to your congressman or your senators or your PTA president or your principal or your chief of police, right? Go just share it. It costs nothing to share the information that you get on the show. It costs nothing to share the YouTube channel. That's something you can do. So I encourage everyone to please like, share, subscribe, and follow everywhere so we can keep this going. Today, our topic was the inspiration of the contagion of inspiration. Next time we'll be back Saturday, July 2nd, 2025, and the topic will be the brutality of protect and serve. We'll have a special guest. My friend, Mr. Obbs, will be here. He is an awesome slam poet, and he will be here as a special guest and doing some performances for us. And so I'm very, very excited to have Mr. Obbs here in August. Again, if you would like to reach out to us, feel free to. You can either do that on Facebook, Instagram, or email us, AmericanGraveyardPurpose@gmail.com. Thank you so much to my co-hosts and cohorts today, Angie Brown, Elizabeth Wolf Blitz, and Mr. Rick Spisak. Thank you for being here today. You can find our resources and citations, gunviolencearchive.org, pewresearch.com, brady.united.org, usafacts.org, publichealth.jhu.edu, bbc.com, statista.com, sandyhookpromise.org, healthdata.org, wikipedia.org, npr.org, findlaw.com, wfaa.com, cornell.edu, youtube.com, preventfirearmsuicide.com, quora.com, cdc.gov, jasonfoundation.com, medschool.duke.com, afsp.org, paho.org, ammo.com, colorado.edu, muse.uga.edu, tedmed.com, publichealth.jhu.edu, and of course, fbi.org. We just added that today. Go do your own research. Thank you so much for coming with us to the show today. Again, like, share, subscribe, and follow. That's it. Any last minute thoughts or farewells, goodbyes from any of my co-hosts today?
Thank you, Marissa, for bringing us all together.
Thank all of you. Without all of you, it would just be me, and nobody wants to hear that. All right. I love you all so much. Please be safe. Peace and blessings to everyone. Have a wonderful month of July. We'll be back August 2nd at 1 p.m. Eastern. 12 p.m. Eastern. 12 p.m. Eastern. All right. We'll see you all next time. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.